When did you become interested in the peak oil?
Well, I spent my life in the oil business, my career, and various places in Colombia, for example. Back in 1966, I made a study of Colombia to analyze what prospects there were. And I could see there were good prospects over here. This place was no good. There were a lot of different basins. Some were heavily explored, some were underexplored. And I ended up having a certain idea as to what the future of Colombia was, but I had no idea of the world. In 1969, I was involved in a world study for an American oil company, Amoco, in Chicago, and I had looked after Latin America. And I could see the same pattern that I'd first seen in Colombia represented in all the countries. Every place has a sort of limit. Of course, in those days, we didn't know much about the offshore, but the onshore, we more or less understood then. And then my career went on, and I ended up being an executive and a manager, but all the time I understood this limit, and it was obvious to see that we were finding fewer fields, and what we did find was getting smaller and more difficult. So it just evolved over my career.
This interest makes you to be worried about it?
Makes me worried about it? No, not really. I'm a geologist. All I can do is describe things. I'm not a missionary. I'm not trying to influence people or anything. I simply describe what I know about.
Would you like to find in your community or your society about this problem?
What answer?
What do you miss in our society?
Well, the world now wakes up just in the last few weeks to the crisis. We face a complete crisis. We are now halfway through the age of oil. There is an age of oil. It lasts only so long. And we're about halfway through it. For the first half, more or less everything you can imagine increased. Industry, transport, trade, agriculture, people, everything expanded. Now we face the other side of the curve, when more or less everything has to get smaller again. And it may get better. I'm not saying it's bad or good. In fact, people who live in small villages sometimes find it rather nice to live in small villages.
How do you value the government's attitude on the problematics originated by the peak oil?
Governments have great trouble recognizing this situation. The governments, because in a democratic system, naturally you are elected for a fairly short term. You like to give good news to the people who elect you. And so to face a problem such as we face is extremely difficult for the governments. I have met ministers in different countries, and some of them, in Ireland actually, understand this problem perfectly well. They know what is happening, but they say in political terms it's extremely difficult to introduce the new policies that they have to do. So we need some kind of crisis, hopefully a small crisis, which is enough to push the governments into a new way of behaving. I think many of them understand in general this picture, but find it difficult in practical terms to react.
I know you are just a geologist, but are you a revolutionary?
Well, in the recent past, I more or less am left of Lenin, you could say. I believe in this capitalistic system was okay while we had abundant, easy energy, but now we face a much more controlled situation that we have to get back to what is available, and that takes a rather different government.
In your opinion, which is your best achievement?
My best achievement? Oh, I don't know. I didn't make many achievements. I was a geologist, is my background, and I made some good geological studies and evaluations and understanding of how the Andes developed in South America and so on. That was the best achievement for me. And this peak oil thing is sort of an interest that developed in retirement, you could say. But it becomes very successful. There are conferences all over the world. There are lots of journalists become interested in the subject.